Watch this.
What is obscene and what is inappropriate to be seen by minors? That was the question before a House committee today. And in their effort to ban minors from seeing drag shows, they might also be banning them from a lot more by accident. 8.4 million Americans use this life-saving drug, insulin, and it just got easier to buy, which doesn't happen often in our healthcare system. A lot of kids want to be a firefighter or a doctor when they grow up, but one Idahoan's dream was to compete in the iconic Iditarod, a 1,000-mile sled dog race, and this weekend, he's making that dream a reality.
We're talking about performances that are patently offensive to the average person and violate community standards with respect to what is suitable for minors.
And that's what they were talking about in the House State Affairs Committee this morning, a bill that would put a civil penalty on anyone allowing a minor to see any sort of live sexual exhibition. Promoters, organizers, performers, they all must take reasonable steps to keep that from happening. And if they don't, well, any parent of said child or even that kid could sue for up to $10,000 after 4 years after that supposed exposure. It's another bill brought forth by the Idaho Family Policy Center. The president, Blaine Kanzati, who we just heard from, saying it isn't targeting any specific performance. It would treat any drag show, erotic dancing, or burlesque equally if they were to be deemed to be sexually explicit conduct or patently offensive. And none of them would be allowed in a public place like a park where children might be hanging around. Several members of the drag community showed up to testify against this bill today, believing it is targeting them specifically, especially after the attention a couple of drag shows in Coeur d'Alene and Boise received last summer. They all made a point of saying they tailor their performances based on location and audience. Something in a park would certainly be less provocative than, say, at a private bar, which requires an ID just to get through the door. Republican Representative Brent Crane asked each of those people that showed up, should children be present at a sexually explicit performance? To which each of them replied, no. Representative Crane using this line of questioning as a way to show the intent of the bill.
So do you see anything in this bill that's going to prohibit you from performing a TV-friendly show?
Ultimately, that would depend on those viewing it from an outsider's perspective. It can be taken in very different ways, and what we consider to be very calm, collective, family-friendly to others in the community who simply want to backlash at us, it could be taken as, oh, that's inappropriate, simply because of how we are dressed, even if it is like fully dressed as I am today.
That vagueness was a kind of a touching point today. However, that vagueness of community standards, there's this accepted notion. If you accept community standards, you accept that there's an accepted notion of what is appropriate for minors. There was a common concern that was today. One pointing to how many kids show up to R-rated movies to kind of prove their point. One parent's idea of appropriate for that may not line up with another.
But I can tell you that there are parents out there that believe just being queer in a public place is inappropriate, that two women kissing is inappropriate, that wearing the clothing opposite of the gender assigned to you at birth is inappropriate. So what is the community standard when they're part of the community feels that your mere existence is inappropriate?
The bill's author, Kanzati, again argued the community standards are not subjective. They're based on the U.S. Supreme Court, what they decided years ago. But they do vary from one community to another, no? Even in this hearing, there was an example of how touchy this topic can be.
Chair, I'm going to ask that you ask the page to leave the room so I can read from the bill text. Thank you, Madam Chair.
See, apparently the legal language of this bill would be inappropriate for minors to hear, according to Representative Crane. Another committee hearing will have to determine if it would be allowed in a library, but I digress. Another point of contention today, the part of the bill that defines sexual conduct. Specifically, this section, sexually provocative dances or gestures performed with accessories that exaggerate male or female primary or secondary sexual characteristics. Secondary sexual characteristics could include a lot of things: facial hair, muscular build, hip shape.
This is where the drag comes in. They're attacking our silicone chests and pads. You see, nobody said anything specific about drag, but those are the things that is being targeted by this bill.
Kanzati countering again today, saying they aren't banning the exaggeration of those characteristics, just if those exaggerated characteristics are seen based on the aforementioned community standards. Then it can't happen in front of a kid. Many of you might be asking, like Democratic Representative Brooke Green did, what about a concert where there might be some of that stuff happening? In the unlikely event, say, Cardi B comes to Idaho, Kanzati said community standards would make it unlikely a kid going to her concert would be in violation of this bill. By the way, Idaho already has a law against uncovering your private parts and displays of sexual acts in public. And they're pretty clear standards, which kind of goes against this bill, complaining that it's pretty vague standards lined out here. So now it is up to the House to decide if this bill will move on to the next step to become law. And if it passes the State Affairs Committee, it passed the State Affairs Committee today with a do pass recommendation to the House. You know, we often turn to lawmakers to solve our problems, whether they exist or not. We don't like something, or it's their job to fix it and regulate it. That's how we're supposed to understand it. There's another option, though. People or corporations could regulate themselves and solve the problem independently, right? What kind of problems, you might be asking? Well, let's start with a big one. How about the cost of drugs, pharmaceutical drugs? Harvard estimates these alone account for 17% of all medical costs. But they argue it shouldn't. All right, let's bring in Andrew Bartline here, who's looking at the cost of insulin for us specifically today, because we know of one company that is now basically dropping their costs, capping their costs, and what it costs, or what they charge for like insulin.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it is. It's one company making a decision, but from our discussions today, it sounds like that could have some larger implications. It's called Eli Lilly, that's the name of the company, and they say nobody will spend more than $35 out of pocket to pay for their most common types of insulin. This is a life-saving drug for many people with diabetes, and in Idaho alone, that accounts for nearly 10% of the adults. And look at how we compare as a country. This graph is 2018 data from the Rand Corporation. They did a study in 2020 with these numbers. The U.S. costs are several times higher than other countries, like 14 times higher, sometimes as little as 7 times higher even. The Diabetes Alliance of Idaho says Eli Lilly capping out-of-pocket costs goes a long way here in Idaho, and we talked to their outgoing executive director, Ashley Rundle, today. She says she's been involved in this conversation for a long time about getting potential costs on the cap, or getting potential caps on the cost of insulin.
We hear, unfortunately, several stories around individuals who might be trying to stretch the utilization of their insulin, or not taking the amount of insulin that they're prescribed because they're trying to make it last longer. There was actually some studies done out of Yale back in 2018 that said a quarter of individuals diagnosed with type 1 and type 2 diabetes were doing that. They were not taking the prescribed amount of insulin because they were trying to make it last longer. We also hear stories of individuals who are having to decide between buying groceries for their family or buying their insulin. So there's just a lot of unfortunate heartbreak out there when it comes to making that decision on where to cut costs and where to spend your money.
So when Eli Lilly comes out and says we're going to cap out-of-pocket costs at $35, what does that tell you?
It tells me that we are finally making an impact in the conversations that we're having. The difference between having a legislative decision to reduce the cost versus an individual organization decision is these organizations can now set the stage for how that could look. You know, it's almost providing a template for other pharmaceutical companies to follow.
How big of a win is that? Did you anticipate something like this to happen?
I honestly did not. Me personally, I was really banking on some legislative decisions to come out, and we still might see that. But at this time, having an organization step up and make that commitment, I think I got the alert at 6:30 in the morning yesterday and was just ecstatic to see the news.
Obviously, you don't work for Eli Lilly, but I'm struggling to wrap my head around why a company would voluntarily make a move that realistically results in less revenue.
Because it's the right thing to do. The cost of insulin is astronomical, and so when you're looking at an average cost of potentially $500 a month to just receive your insulin for your care, that is a really high number and an expensive cost for the average American. Being able to look at the human as a human and not just a patient, not just a dollar amount.
And how would that impact somebody in Idaho who relies on insulin? You said this is life-saving for people, but that's just one company. So how does that impact an Idahoan?
You know, it is an amazing first step. Is how I would like to put it. This is just the beginning. So if an individual receives insulin that happens to be coming from Eli Lilly, then this will directly impact them, right? Reducing their rate by 70%. Now, if individuals are receiving insulin that are not distributed by Eli Lilly, then there is not going to necessarily be a change at this time. However, we anticipate that this is just the beginning of the conversation of change.
Do you have a reason to believe that any other companies are going to watch this and decide to make a similar decision?
If history proves itself, I anticipate that this is going to start a ripple effect. I hope. I think I'm going to live in the side of rose-colored glasses a little bit and anticipate some change across the board. And so individuals who are still struggling to afford their insulin and are seeing this, I'm hoping that it provides that glimmer of hope that we're headed in the right direction.
A 2022 report from the American Diabetes Association says the annual cost of diabetes care is $1.3 billion. That's for Idaho specifically. And if you get a comparison, or to give you a comparison, medical care for people with diabetes alone, that costs more than the entire Medicaid expansion budget that's gotten pushback from state lawmakers who continue to say it's out of control. Well, this is larger than that. Idahoans with diabetes have medical bills as well,
Yep.
Brian, that are 2.3 times higher than the average person, you could say, or somebody who doesn't have diabetes.
Because usually it's not just diabetes
Yes.
you're dealing with. It leads to other things.
Added complications there, yeah. So their medical bills are just naturally larger. So she says that this is a good starting point to helping these people who are already burdened by a system that's difficult. Well, she says this is a good step in the right direction.
That graph that shows the comparison between the United States and other countries, now that would drop, but it's still more than twice as much in America insulin would be than any other country on that list.
Yeah, I mean, there's some countries on that list where it's like $6 or $7.
Right.
35 Progress, it's only one company, but again, still much more than what you'd find elsewhere.
All right, thanks, Andrew. One Idahoan is embarking on a rugged journey this weekend. We're learning what it takes to race in the Iditarod. And this is the time we want you to send us your questions, your comments, and your concerns. You can text them to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Always remember, include your name and the hashtag #the208. And if you keep it clean, concise, and clever, we might share it at the end of the show.
I love to run dogs because when you're out in the wilderness, you and 12 dogs it's a very sublime experience.
Mellows you out a little bit, seems. What some describe as sublime, of outstanding spiritual, intellectual, or moral worth, others might call long and lonely. The Iditarod, the most famous dog race in the world, takes off this weekend with 33 mushers sledding 1,000 miles, more than 1,000 miles, along the wild Alaskan landscape. You know, the concept of dogs pulling people across the frozen tundra is a centuries-old custom for the sourdough state. The invention of the airplane doing little to put an end to it. However, the invention of the snowmobile in the 60s, that kind of made a mushing lose a little bit of its lure. Not wanting to lose it completely, the Wasilla Knik Centennial Committee came up with the idea of the Iditarod as a way to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Alaska Territory. Chairman of that committee, Dorothy Page, mapped out the route over historic trails, ones once used during the gold rush and to deliver mail. The 1967 inaugural Centennial race was only 56 miles long. 6 years later, it was lengthened to more than 1,000 miles, and it took 3 weeks for the winner to finish it. Well, the fastest Iditarod was run in 2017, finishing in just 8 days and 3+ hours, give or take. This year is the 50th anniversary of that long-distance race, and Idaho will be represented once again by Sandpoint resident, not once again, just Idaho once again, but Sandpoint resident Jed Stevenson. This will be his first. He's an American Army brat, grew up all over the country and around the world. He went to school at BYU, Idaho, and he has been in Sandpoint for the last 7 years. The ER nurse and dad to twins said his passion for mushing started at a young age.
I had a dream to run Iditarod since I was 9 years old. My dad read to me books by Gary Paulson. Specifically, Dog Song was the name of the book. It was about an Inuit boy who learned the traditional ways of dog mushing as snow machines were kind of replacing the sled dog. And that kind of sparked my imagination of dog mushing and ultimately running Iditarod.
That imagination yet kept running. Jed did dog tours to pay for college, and when he graduated, he headed up to Alaska. There he found a mentor who'd run that Iditarod more than 20 times. Some good experience. So 6 years ago, he got his own dog team together, and Jed started racing. And after proving he could survive and keep his dogs alive on such an excursion, Jed is now ready to race in his first ever Iditarod.
I'm also an ultra marathon runner. And so everything I ask my dogs to do, I'm willing to do myself. I like to think that I embrace the same spirit that my dogs are possessed by, and that kind of unifies us, and we kind of all work together to get down the trail.
Jed said he's going to get about 6 hours a day off the sled, and it won't be spent sleeping. No, the dogs will sleep, but Jed will be busy feeding them and massaging them so they can be ready for the next stage. He says he'll get about an hour or two of rest. The Iditarod starts this Sunday, and we're going to be following along with Jed as he chases the dream he's had since he was a kid, a journey that is much bigger than the race itself.
I think my biggest message to the world is when you follow a dream is much deeper than like a childhood idea. And if you can grab a hold of your form of Iditarod in your life, it can help kind of correct a lot of the things that you struggle with. And I think dreams are the best antidepressant in the world.
Some valley spots may be seeing some snow flurries right now, and I want to explain why. We've had some moisture that's been working its way in all day today, and you've noticed the cloud cover, and a lot of that moisture has been staying really light, so it hasn't been able to reach the ground, and you can see those clouds lowering a bit, but that moisture is evaporating and not quite making it to the ground. So when we say we just don't have enough moisture to see any strong snow showers, that's what we're talking about, because it's likely evaporating before it makes its way to the ground. But you can see it did lower enough to shroud our view over from Boise Basin, and we expect this moisture to continue to make its way inland all the way through the night tonight, bringing some light snow showers to mountain locations and a dusting to some valley spots. So here's what we're seeing on the radar right now. You can see more of those snow showers being confined towards Cascade and McCall, an area south of there, a little bit more north of Boise, but we could still see some of those flurries falling across valley locations as well right now. It looks like a little bit of a light rain falling over in Ontario right now, but nothing reported as of yet at the airport, so we could see some of that evaporating as well. And if you're wondering if we could continue to see chances of snow as we go into March, well, we certainly can, because we're going to see those temperatures stay well below normal. Our average high for this time of year is 52 degrees in Boise, and you can see those temperatures are going to be staying below 52 degrees all the way through the next 10 days or so. And if you're wondering, well, what happens after 10 days? We're looking to stay below average all the way through mid-March. And yes, a lot of things could change and we could see some fluctuation with that, but that's kind of the big picture of what we are expecting. And you can see that below average temperature is staying all the way through your 7-day forecast as well. And you can see that those snow chances will be lingering, as well as those 20-degree lows.
Name, image, likeness has rocked the world of college athletics, the NIL. For the first time, well, not the first time, it's been a couple years for NCAA. They've been doing this, and now athletes can profit off their fame, their names, their image, their likeness. It seems like overnight, sports posters and billboards went from shadowed faces to intense glares of star players, and Boise State hasn't only just hopped on the bandwagon, they're one of the leaders of this cause. Different Broncos are cashing in on different things. Bronco Hoops players Chibuzo Agbo deal with Taco Bell, or Del Taco, excuse me. His teammate, Tyson Degenhardt, not only has a deal with Lyle Pearson Auto, but as you can see, he likes to hand out some donuts. The Degenhardt doesn't. Last fall, Bronco football players cashed in on first of their kind trading cards, but just in time for Women's History Month. A new set of BSU trading cards is now available, featuring the winter sports, including women's gymnastics, women's basketball, as well as the men's basketball team. And then you open one of these packs, you got a 1 in 10 chance to collect an autographed card from one of the Boise State student athletes. You can pick them up at Jackson stores. We're going to see what we have inside this batch right here. See if we got anything cool that we want to. Oh, there's 2 labels here. I got Mandy Simpson on the front. I got Bella on the back. Let's see what we got here. I don't have time to go through all of them. Just a quick shuffle here through some of these. Max Rice. How about that? I got a Max Rice in this pack. And then we also got Aaron Morton on the gymnastics, Anna Ferguson. You got a whole bunch in here. Women's basketball, Mary Kay Naro. Who else we got? Got an elbow right there. See? Yep, and a Degenhardt. A Degenhardt dozen and a card. It's been my lucky day today. Cheerleaders, they got the Spirit Squad also in here. So you can find these, again, at Jackson's, and you can kind of find your favorite card, hopefully. Speaking of sports, the 2023 BSU football season schedule was released today. We have that on our website, ktvb.com. Final moment of the show here. Let's get to the comments you sent in during today's show, like this one about the bill that would make drag performances possibly illegal in Idaho. Legislators have proven they are well versed in the dog whistles. They are only hurting people of Idaho to satisfy their biases, says B&B in Nampa. Will minors be allowed to attend the Idaho Shakespeare Festival if this bill passes? They have costumes that enhance secondary sexual characteristics. Specifically mentioned, not talking about Shakespearean plays, those kind of things. Has to be explicitly sexual. That was the explanation given in the committee this morning. Humanitarian act by Eli Lilly to lower the cost of insulin therapy, ? Haven't they always been able to set their own prices of their products? The question being, what's taken them so long, and should it be considered humanitarian since it has taken them so long to get there? Idaho has had an Idaho winner of the Iditarod. Joe Runyon, capital class of 1966. That's true. We looked it up because I did not realize that. Joe Runyon, 1989, he actually won it in 11 days, 5 hours, and 24 minutes. Born in Oregon, raised in Idaho, and now we're going to be rooting for one more. Jed, hopefully can be the second Idahoan to win, well, the last great race in his first time ever. We'll see you back here tomorrow.